It's Wednesday, March 12th, 2025. Good news in Ukraine, why one congressman did this for the first time, and a theocratic fascist complains about theocratic fascism. Next on the AM Update.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire.
I've never voted for a continuing resolution, but I'm voting for the CR that's on the floor today.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Let me tell you something. I went and faced down the angry mob at Columbia at the height of that stuff. Pro-Hamas protester. It was dangerous.
While America engages in a war on woke, Canadians will continue to value inclusiveness.
Theocrats is that they want to impose their morality on the rest of us.
Secretary of State Marco Rubio says there's progress with Ukraine.
Today we made an offer that the Ukrainians have accepted, which is to enter into a ceasefire and into immediate negotiations to end this conflict in a way that's enduring and sustainable and accounts for their interests, their security, their ability to prosper as a nation. I want to personally we both want to thank the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, His Majesty, for hosting us, for making this possible. They've been instrumental in this process, and we're very grateful to them for hosting us here today. And hopefully we'll take this offer now to the Russians. And we hope that they'll say yes to peace. The ball is now in their court.
That is Secretary of State Marco Rubio during those talks in Jeddah, Saudi Arabia, between the U.S. and Ukraine, finally getting Ukraine to agree to a ceasefire. This only happened after Donald Trump suspended aid to Ukraine. Well, National Security Advisor Mike Waltz says the president has relented.
That, and I think as a result of this positive step forward, the president has decided to lift the pause on aid and on our security assistance to Ukraine.
Back at the White House, Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt had an update on egg.
Well, we definitely do share the concerns of the American people when it comes to the price of eggs. However, good news, the average cost of a dozen eggs is actually down since Secretary Rollins and President Trump announced their plan. It's down $1.85. So that's good news on the cost of eggs. And as we know, under the Biden administration, egg prices went up 22%. This is another example of an economic mess that President Trump inherited, and the Secretary of Agriculture and the President are focused on fixing it. Secretary Rollins put out a 4-point plan, to address this crisis, and she has been honest and realistic with the American people, as this administration always is. It will take about 3 to 6 months to get the egg supply back to where it should be.
Yeah, because the Biden administration, in the midst of bird flu, told egg producers, hey, yeah, let's just start killing chickens. That's a great idea. No idea how the flu, and we don't really have research that I understand anyway. It shows a direct link between bird flu and the safety of eggs. So again, another economic mess, but the price of eggs has been, and it's come down a little bit, the price of eggs has been ridiculous. In Congress, the House narrowly approved a stopgap measure on Tuesday to keep the government funded through September, with Speaker Mike Johnson managing to largely keep his GOP conference united and pass the measure days ahead of a possible government shutdown. The House passed the bill in a 217 to 213 vote, with one Republican opposing it and one Democrat supporting it. Representative Thomas Massey of Kentucky was the sole Republican no vote, while Representative Jared Golden of Maine was the lone Democratic vote. The bill now heads to the Senate, where it needs, I believe, a 60-vote threshold in order to pass. Republicans hold 53 seats in the Senate. But back in the House, Congressman Andy Biggs, he's one of the best congressmen in that legislative body. He has never voted for a continuing resolution before, but he voted for this one, and he explained why.
The current CR, which we will be voting on later today. I've never voted for a continuing resolution, but I'm voting for the CR that's on the floor today. President Trump has proven that the executive branch is the only branch of government that's willing to bend down the spending curve. His administration has done more in the last 50 days than Congress has done in the last 50 years. I have sponsored over 520 individual bills to reduce federal spending. I did that in 2023, but not a single one was even looked at by leadership. This CR will allow President Trump and his administration to continue carrying out the mandate given to him by American voters. It will also provide him the funds that he needs to enforce border security, but it will also turn down the spending curve. So, because he's advocated for it, and because of the rationale I just gave you, I've decided to vote for this CR. President Trump will carry out the demands of the American people, and I will be there to help him.
Just FYI, if Democrats do shut down the government by not actually passing this through the Senate, guess who's in total control of the government? I mean, like total control. That would be President Trump and OMB Director Russ Vought. Republicans have all the cards here. In fact, I think they probably recognize that, hey, even if you want to shut down the government, we still have all the leverage. That's just smart politics. And finally, after my entire life, I haven't seen this out of Republicans. Republicans are actually looking like the smart ones here. Case in point, here is Congressman Keith Self at a meeting of some subcommittee in Washington, D.C. in the House of Representatives. He's on this subcommittee with the representative from Delaware, Sarah McBride, who is a dude who pretends to be a woman.
I now recognize the representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
So, Republican Congressman Keith Self accurately refers to Sarah McBride as Mr. Because that's biology. He is a Mr. He is not a woman. He is telling the truth. And Mr. McBride responds to Congressman Self by saying, "Thank you, madam." Now listen to what happens next.
Ranking Member Keating, also wonderful.
Mr. Chairman, could you repeat your introduction again, please?
What you're about to hear is the voice of Congressman Bill Keating, a Democrat.
Yes, we have set the standard on the floor of the House, and I'm simply...
What is that standard, Mr. Chairman? Would you repeat what you just said when you introduced a duly elected representative from the United States of America? Please.
I will. The representative from Delaware, Mr. McBride.
Mr. Chairman, you are out of order. Mr. Chairman, have you no decency? I've come to know you a little bit, but this is not decent.
We will continue this
You will not continue it with me unless you introduce a duly elected representative the right way.
This hearing is adjourned.
Absolutely blew a gasket over two little letters. Blew a gasket because one congressman wouldn't refer to another congressman as Miss. Two little letters, M and R, Mr., caused that scene in a subcommittee in Washington, D.C. yesterday. Hey, great job, Congressman Self, and I hope you do not even come close to the line of apologizing. You have nothing to apologize for. Now, if you're wondering if this little outcry, this little escapade, this blowing a gasket that you heard from Congressman Keating, I should say, if you're wondering why something sounds familiar, like this is like a dogma to him, very much a dogma. You will use the correct pronouns, or else I'm going to storm out of this meeting and try to berate you, embarrass you in front of your colleagues. If you wonder why that sounds dogmatic, it's because it is. Well, there's one person who calls himself an atheist who is very much of that dogma, very much a theocratic fascist, if you will, even though he wants to be known as an atheist. I'll tell you about that a little bit later. But first, about half the staff at the Department of Education are expected to be laid off in the latest rounds of firings under the Trump administration. Fox obtained a memo sent to staff members by the Office of Finance and Operations on Tuesday saying all Department of Education employees needed to leave the building by 6 p.m., They all added that the education offices and regional offices will be closed to employees and contractors on Wednesday due to security reasons. The memo states that employees who are approved to work remote can do so today. The agency says all offices will reopen on Thursday and in-person work will resume. So we talked about Fran Poobah of the Teachers Union, Randy Weingarten absolutely losing her mind over rumors that Trump is getting set to disband the Department of Education. Well, maybe those rumors were not unfounded after all. All right, when we come back, President Trump puts Tesla terrorists on notice. Also, Mike Johnson on deporting Hamas sympathizers from college campuses. And what is going on in Syria? We're going to talk about that and more coming up next.
Let me get in a second. You want my notes?
Yeah.
They gave me notes. I said, I'm not Biden. I don't need those. Yeah.
That's Donald Trump yesterday with Elon Musk, Tesla CEO, outside the White House. President Trump actually purchased a Tesla from Elon Musk yesterday, touting Tesla's plans to increase production in the United States. Donald Trump pulled out a bundle of papers from his suit coat pocket, said, they gave me a bunch of notes. I'm not Biden. I don't need notes. Maybe a leading contender so far, quote, of the second Trump administration. Speaking of Tesla, President Trump also announced on Tuesday he's going to classify violence against Tesla dealerships as domestic terrorism.
I'll do that. I'll do it. I'm going to stop them. If we catch anybody doing it, because they're harming a great American company. You know, I've stuck up for the NFL. I've stuck up for a lot of American companies and other companies, but American companies. I did a very big favor for the NFL. I do favors for all. When you heard an American company, especially a company like this, supplies so many jobs that others are unable to do, when you do that, those people are going to go through a big problem when we catch them.
So President Trump says this ongoing violence against Tesla dealerships that will be classified as domestic terrorism. Back in Congress, Speaker Mike Johnson says if you're a student fomenting pro-Hamas sentiment on college campuses and actually taking part in protests and you're not a full citizen, yeah, you can go straight home.
Let me tell you something. I went and faced down the angry mob at Columbia at the height of that stuff, when the pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas protesters were there. I'm telling you, this is my own observation, not something I read in a newspaper. It was dangerous. I met with Jewish students before we went to campus who were holed away off campus because they were instructed by the administration not to come to class, which they paid for fear of their physical safety. The administrators there refused to take control of that campus. They refused to allow the PD to come, the police department to come in and take control, and it turned into a chaos. The president has since been removed, and now they got the same problem again. Columbia and other universities, they have to keep control of campus. The first responsibility of an administration is ensuring the safety of the students who are paying tuition to be there, for crying out loud. This madness has to stop. We have to get control of it. This guy apparently was a mastermind of those very things, when the gnashing of teeth and the ripping of clothes and the people screaming at me, wanting to rip me limb from limb because I was there talking about moral clarity and how there's a right and a wrong. They were doing that. They disrupted the campus. They were threatening physical violence to their fellow students. If you're on a student visa, I'm going to say this clearly. If you are on a student visa and you're in America and you're an aspiring young terrorist who wants to prey upon your Jewish classmates, you're going home. We're going to arrest your tail, and we're going to send you home where you belong. And this is just getting started. So, look, I appreciate free speech. I used to defend it in courts, but this is far beyond the pale of that. When you are threatening your classmates and spewing anti-Semitism and all this hatred, it's enough. And I think the American people understand that. They're supporting it, and I'm glad we have a president who's strong enough to lay down the law.
House Speaker Mike Johnson, in no uncertain terms, voicing his support for the Trump administration's efforts to make sure and root out these pro-Islamic, pro-Hamas protests that still proliferate on college campuses. So what is going on in Syria right now? I want to read portions of this piece from standingforfreedom.com, written by William Wolf. Headline, Syrian Christians are being slaughtered and the media doesn't care. Over the weekend, many watched in horror as reports poured out of Syria detailing the slaughter of Christians and other religious minorities under the new Islamist regime led by Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, now masquerading under his birth name, Ahmed al-Shara. Newsweek reports that since Thursday, more than 1,000 people, including Christian minorities and Alawites, the sect to which Assad, the recently deposed Syrian president, belongs, 1,000 people have been killed, according to the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights and local reports. This is a man with blood on his hands, a radical Islamist with a history rooted in both ISIS and al-Qaeda, who has long despised Christians and sought their eradication. Yet, the mainstream media and even the United Nations have bent over backwards to whitewash his image, painting him as some sort of pragmatic reformer. Meanwhile, the bodies of Syrian Christians and Alawites pile up, and the West's silence is deafening. This is not just negligence, it's complicity, driven by a media that hates Christians and a failed neoconservative foreign policy obsessed with regime change no matter the cost. Let's be clear about who al-Jawlani is. This is no freedom fighter or rebel, as the media loves to call him. He's the former emir of al-Nusra Front, al-Qaeda's Syrian branch, and now the head of Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, the Sunni Islamist group that toppled Bashar al-Assad in December of last year. His track record is a litany of atrocities, attacking Christian villages along the Kabur River, destroying churches, and orchestrating kidnappings and massacres. Reports from the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights confirm that since early March, over 1,000 civilians, many of them Christians and Alawites, have been butchered in revenge killings and massacres, particularly in coastal regions like Latakia and Jebla. Women and children haven't been spared. Entire families have been wiped out by HTS forces and their jihadist allies. That is portions of a piece from standingforfreedom.com written by William Wolf. You can read that full piece there. It is interesting, is it not? Breathless at the drop of one pro-Hamas supporting person's blood in Gaza. And we want to shut down the entire planet for that, if the media had its way. Yet 1,000 people, many of them Christian, entire Christian families, wiped out since the beginning of March at the hands of an Islamist new dictator, would-be dictator in Syria. And crickets. Crickets from our media, crickets from the United Nations. That's wicked and evil. But it's always interesting how when it's one group of people, it's always excused and swept under the rug. And now here's this. If you haven't seen this yet or heard this yet, this is well worth the next 3 minutes of your life. Sam Cedar is an atheist for all intents and purposes. He describes himself as something other here in what you're about to listen to. He went on the Jubilee channel. We've played clips from Jubilee before. It's when one person of one worldview sits down and debates 20 people of another worldview. He was recently on this Jubilee channel debating MAGA, individuals from the world of MAGA. Now, Sam Cedar, like I said, he's a somewhat well-known atheist, unreformed Jew. He describes himself as something else in this clip, but he's an atheist for all intents and purposes. He was absolutely disemboweled rhetorically in 3 minutes by this individual who I've never heard of, and I don't even know whose name it is, on the topic of morality and religion. Listen up.
Hey.
It's nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Okay, so I would like to touch on the religious fundamentalist aspect.
Yeah.
Are you an atheist?
I'm a Reformed Jew. I don't have a strong belief in the existence of God, but I don't think that religion in and of itself is bad.
Okay, so what's wrong with the religious fundamentalists? So like when you said trans rights and women's rights or something like that?
Well, the problem I have with religious fundamentalists, and really more, I guess it's really theocrats, is that they want to impose their morality that comes from their religion on the rest of us, and I don't. But
morality, from your view, is going to be a preference, right? It's not morality; it's a preference. So morality without a foundation is going to reduce you to a preference.
Well, I have a foundation for my morality.
Which is what?
It's a humanist vision of what basically creates as little suffering as possible for as many people.
Okay, so you're like a consequentialist? Utilitarian?
I don't really bother myself with being a consequentialist or a utilitarian.
It's always going to reduce you to a preference. So if you say that killing is wrong and I say it's right, you would really have no contention with that.
Well, no, I don't base my understanding of civil society on religion. And so we have a civil society. Okay. We have laws that we have decided as a society in a democratic way. And for some people, it's okay for it to be informed by their religion. That's okay.
Okay, perfect. So if tomorrow society comes together and we say, hey, trans folks don't deserve rights, you would be okay with that?
No, I would be against it, but I mean it would be.
It would be morally right under your view.
Not morally right. No. I'm not talking about morals.
Okay,
here.
So here's where I'm getting to, right? Religious foundations provide an ethical framework for one to live their life off.
I believe you can have an ethical framework without religion.
And if we take the leftist view to its logical tail end, to its extreme view, you have low reproductive birth rates. You have a reproductive dead end. So two men together can't reproduce unless they have to take from a healthy straight couple. Religion provides this foundation where you do prioritize the nuclear family.
So do you have a problem with gay people being married?
It's not that I have a problem. I just don't see a justification for why they ought to be gay outside of it just feels good. Can you give me another justification for it?
Well, I think maybe that's the way they were born.
Okay, what about pedophiles? Are they born that way?
They may be, yeah.
Okay, so should we let a pedophile off the hook since they were born that way?
No, I think we as a society has decided...
Should implement duties to prevent them from acting on that innate urge, correct?
Well, I think between consenting adults, it's a different thing than...
Okay, so you're okay with a
children.
45-year-old dad with a 19-year-old daughter as well? Incest?
No.
If they consent, you're okay with that?
No, I think society has also determined that it's not beneficial.
Right, there's duties and obligations that we have, so religion provides those duties. Life isn't about freedom and exercising what you want.
I mean, well, you want to impose your religious doctrine on me, and I don't want that.
You just admitted we need duties. We have responsibility as a society to keep us functioning, to keep us thriving. Your leftist view, the liberal view, doesn't provide anything besides it just makes me feel good. Religion does. So what's your argument?
Wow. Thoughts on what we just listened to next. So in 3 minutes, Sam Seder, who is very pleased with himself indeed, by the way, always at all times, lowering himself to debate MAGA trash, or garbage if your name is Joe Biden. That's probably how he sees the world of MAGA. In 3 minutes, Sam Seder goes from saying, I don't want you to impose your religious, fundamentalist, theocratic views on me. He goes from that to admitting, although he says he's not admitting, but he is admitting that under his worldview, it would be permissible for a man, a 45-year-old father, to marry his 19-year-old daughter. The irony of this happening the same day that the previous clip we talked about in Congress earlier in the program, where Congressman Keith Self called Sarah McBride, who is a dude, called him Mr. The irony is not and should not be lost on you. Under one worldview, the worldview that claims it does not want theocratic fascism shoved down their throats, they will lose their bowels if you do not use the proper pronouns at all times for all people. Proper, of course, being the operative word there. That's the same worldview. It's absolutely chaos. It's absolutely chaos. That worldview cannot hold under its own weight. It fell apart in 3 minutes as Sam Seder debated a guy that I've never heard of, never seen before. Fell apart in 3 minutes. It's chaotic. But, as I've always said, chaos is the language of hell. That'll do it for Wednesday. Back at it again tomorrow. Don't forget, the poll of the week is live right now on my X profile, @RealAMUpdate. I asked you whether or not you get the memification of J.D. Vance. Talk about that and more coming up tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. I'm Aaron McIntire, and this is the AM Update.